Hello, everybody. Hello, you're all very welcome. We're going to get started right away. We'll just make sure there that everybody is let into the room and that everybody is good to go and that we're up and running. Okay, yep, that all looks good. Perfect. Well, hello, everybody. You're all very welcome indeed to our Economics in Our World webinar this evening. My name is Susan Hayes Culleton, and I am here today with my co-author, Stephen Moylan, to talk to you about a range of different things this evening. But in particular, what we're very keen to talk to you about is, number one, a sample question around employment and unemployment that Stephen has put together. And then secondly, after that, I'm going to follow on with some ways in which you can minimize preparation for your economics classes. Then I will also talk to you about some economic trends that are happening around the world, just to give context to the theory that is in the textbook. And then after that, I'll also mention 5 different opportunities there are for any students who might be interested in pursuing economics as a career thereafter. So first and foremost, of course, we're very excited here to show you that we have our book is now out and live. Economics in Our World. It's been 2 years in the making, and it's really been, as ever, a passion project, bringing together a lot of what is going on in the world now and how it's changed, with, of course, the things that never change at all. Some economics concepts are around for a very, very long time, whether we go back to Adam Smith himself in The Wealth of Nations, and well, maybe I don't go back as far as 1776, but you know where I'm going with that. And just before we start and before I hand over to Stephen, who will take you through the sample question, I just want to talk to you about how this book is different. As some of you may know, I have been on this journey now with Edco for quite some time. I've had 2 books before this called Positive Economics, and this one is called Economics in Our World. So I just would like to bring you up to date on a couple of things. So first of all, we have introduced a lot more questions, and we distinguish between higher and ordinary level within them. So if you have a class of students where you have both levels, or of course where you have students who are starting off at a certain level and then elevating up, etc. Or of course, if you're introducing economics and taking some chapters that you might want to give a taster through transition year and give them some easy questions or easier questions along the way, all of that we're making a lot more streamlined for you. The second thing, of course, is the project. Now, we took a very different approach to the project in this book. And what we did is that, first of all, there is indeed a step-by-step guide, but it is in the form of a diary. So what we did is that we have written this particular chapter through the lens of a student who's going through it, and from a timing basis, how she might navigate through the sources, but also navigate the emotions of the journey as well. Whether it is overwhelm and not knowing where to start, to bringing in her own opinion about things, to critical analysis, then through analyzing the data, through getting help from sources where she needed it. And of course, then it finishes up where the person who does the project then submits it to her teacher, and then her teacher gives feedback. You can imagine which roles both Stephen and I played along the way. Then another element that we'd like to talk to you about as well is what is on Edco Learning. And as the resources are uploaded in the coming weeks, you'll see them. So there are slides for every chapter. There's also the schemes for every strand. There's also a range of different resources that have been made along the way, like the web links that are in each of the chapters. All of those are updated again, based on podcasts that are out, explainers that are out now, infographics that are out, etc. In addition, there is a range of interactive quizzes there as well. And then finally, a new addition to this book as well is there's an economic mini documentary that is going with each chapter. And some of those are being released week after week as new developments come to light as well. So the ambition that we had for you is to make a package that would help you to prepare, of course, as best you always do for your classes, but also weaving together a lot of digital as well as physical resources that are in there. Another addition to the book this time is that in many cases there is a case study that weaves through the chapters. So there's various different characters that navigate through the chapter. For example, in the case of international trade, you meet a character who he's thinking about getting a part-time job. He works in a place where he sees tourists coming in, he sees the supply chain of the business, etc. A lot of those case studies are written through the lens of the teenager. so that they can see really how economics is in our world. And that's what inspired the title. When it came to choosing the title, when the team at Edco put forward various different ideas, Stephen and I really did both agree that what we do in this case is we genuinely show economics in our world. From an exam preparation point of view, there is various different sample questions in the text themselves. A lot of the exam questions have also been taken out of the exact exam papers. And also, and particularly this was Stephen's idea, is the solutions for the some exam questions are in the text, but also the length of text that is expected for that particular question is there as well. So the student really does get a sense of what the question is, but also the depth that is expected, as well as the length of the text representing that depth, how that actually visually looks on the page as well. So all of that is in there too. In addition, there's a range of exam tips. There's various different things, whether it's how you would remember the direction on the demand function, for example. Of course, we have specs. Specs is there in all of the market structures, etc. So there's a lot of exam tips as well along the way. Now, the biggest challenge that we have as writing an economics textbook is, of course, just how quickly things change. And this is a challenge for anybody who will ever write an economics textbook ever. It's one that I'm very used to seeing. And that is why when it comes to the various different graphs and the different links and the different resources and the different examples and so on that are in there, all of those are referenced. So for example, when we talk about the European Central Bank, for example, when it comes to monetary policy and the chapter to do with inflation, interest rates and money supply, then that links back to resources where you can see the ECB explainers. And as those are updated, well, then of course it will lead you to see more of them as well. And then one last thing that I just want to mention to you as well is that in every chapter, there is a documentary that is either on Netflix or it's on YouTube or it's somewhere. That can be helpful if you are, again, introducing the subject to transition years, or if it is that you want to give extra context, if there's a certain topic that needs more background to it. If it is that you're introducing a topic to a group where you want to give them homework and where they need to summarize the key points in it, etc. There is that as well in each and every case. So in summary, what does economics in our world do? Well, it brings together that real focus on how you can get a student ready for the exam, but also how you can get the student ready for the exam with the prep that they need with exam technique, as well as contextualizing the theory in real practice so that it's easier to study. It's easier to study for the exam, but it's also easier to understand what you're studying. And the second thing that economics in our world does is that it helps the student navigate through the journey on a personalized basis with those case studies tailored for them, with the higher and ordinary level questions, with various different links where they can go off and understand how to get more on it. And of course, then that segues right into the third thing, which is that we have a much more updated version on the project. For the student who is navigating that, trying to understand how do we get the data, how do I personalize it, how do I bring in the learning outcomes into the project, where do I get feedback, where do I get help, and where do I turn data into a project, and then also understand exactly what's needed at every single section along the way. All of that is part of economics in our world. I was going to say the updated version, but it's not. It's simply the new version. So on that note, I'm now going to hand you over to Stephen. He's going to walk you through the sample question that is going to be shared with everybody who's participating this evening, as well as anybody who has registered for the webinar. And then I'm going to be back with you after that then to focus on the prep minimization, etc. Stephen, over to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Susan. Hi, guys. So thanks a million for joining. I know coming to the end of term now and everyone is kind of tired. So we appreciate you joining the webinar. So we just wanted to go through, as Susan has said there, just some of the things that we have in the textbook. Susan has been excellent in kind of transforming a lot of the ideas that I would have in terms of the exam, where students need to go with the exam and then bring it to life. So we feel that together, we've really brought it together and we've gathered for everything. So again, as an economics teacher, I know there's the big target obviously is the exam. So that's where I've come from it. And then we've kind of tried to merge the two ideas together. So that's what I'm going to do tonight. I'm just going to go through an exam question, or how I try to prepare students in my classroom. And again, these will all be shared with you. There'll be an email sent out for all participants. So this will be sent out after, so you will get access to this. So I'm just going to share my screen and just take you through that sample question. Okay, hopefully you can all see my screen. If you can't, you can just shout. But I'm just going to go through a question on employment and unemployment again. Like, I've been correcting for over 10 years and been advising examiner at both ordinary level and higher level. So that's what I've tried to bring to the table, I suppose, with economics in our world. And then that's what we're going to go through tonight with this employment question. So, like, in fairness to the SEC, they've tried to keep it very up to date, as Susan has said at the start. Like, it's constantly changing. But the SEC, they've tried to bring in relevant data, information, infographics, graphs, just to try and make it relevant. So what you're actually teaching in the class, we can get across to students. So it's kind of real world stuff. Although it's economics, and a lot of economics doesn't change, obviously. They have tried to bring it and to life, really, I suppose, to make it engaging for students. So that's what I tried to do with this exam question, try to make it a real life, something that you could use in your class, be it at the end of a chapter or the end of a topic test, and just see kind of try to replicate what the SEC are doing, really, in terms of an exam question. So we all know with the new spec that has come in, infographics have been a big part of it. In fairness to the CSO, they do huge work, and they do excellent infographics. We're probably all using them in the class at this stage. And the graphs and charts with the infographics especially are excellent. So I've just used this one from the Labour Force survey from the CSO. I think the last one up there is Q3 2024. So again, like, they could pull different information, and we know at this stage in the Labour Force surveys that they kind of give us different information in different ones for different quarters. But they always give us, obviously, the unemployment rate. Sort of unemployment rate there, 4.5%. So I've just put in that infographic there. Again, you can go through with students. And again, just at exam time, what's important, like, sometimes the SEC have asked Q1, Q2, Q3. Like, for students, they need to know that. If they just see Q1 or Q2 in an exam, then it's a shock. So, like, it's something that we need to get across to them. Q1 is Q1 of the year. So it's, again, from seeing these infographics, it is important that they're familiar then with seeing that terminology before they go into the exam. And again, another thing that the SEC are doing, we've seen it now since the new spec, they like to have an entry point or a quote from the RTE, The Economist, New York Times. They've brought it from lots and lots of places. And again, I've just taken one here from RTE. So the unemployment rate fell to 4.5% in Q3 2024 from 4.7%. New figures from the Central Statistics Office show today. So again, it replicates what's been shown in the infographic above. And again, so that's kind of the current, the topical part of it. And then the old economics that doesn't change. Like, from that, then they could be asked, explain the term unemployment. And again, as Susan has said, we've tried to replicate this throughout the chapter. Now, it's not so much of an issue anymore, but especially at the start, I think students struggled. Well, how much do I need to write? Well, we kind of know now from definitions, like, there's 3 to 4 lines given for that spacing. Obviously, the definition of unemployment, they need to get across here. But even the terminology of the question has changed. And I know it came up a couple of years ago. A lot of teachers were giving out that the term defined there is not asked an awful lot. It's explain the term. But if it's explain the term, like, it's not just simply the definition. It could be giving the unemployment rate at the moment if it's not given above. Also, the students can get marks if they don't have the definition perfect. So that's a big thing. And that's, again, in favour of our students. That's something that we would have seen in the correcting when we were correcting in the summer. So that's all in favour of the students. So that terminology there, explain as opposed to define. But again, the definition, unemployment, all those seeking work and existing wage rates who are unable to find work. So that's what we're looking for there, or the SEC are normally looking for. So again, that doesn't change. That's just a simple language following on from the infographic above. So it's relevant to what's shown above. And again, the second part, we kind of know now there's 3 parts to every long question. There's an A, B, and C. And then there's either 2 or 3 parts in those questions. But again, I don't think timing is a massive issue. And something that we're seeing in the correcting is students generally tend to answer an extra question when they're sitting the written exam. So timing isn't an issue, even though there's the 3 parts, A, B, and C, and then that's broken down into 2 or 3 parts itself. Then again, a follow-on question then. So the Labour Force survey obviously is shown above. State one other measure of unemployment other than the Labour Force survey shown above, and then explain 2 reasons why one of these methods is more accurate. So obviously the Labour Force survey is the most accurate. The other one that they could use would be the live register or another one that would be accepted would be the census. The live register is generally the one that we teach, the live register and the labour force survey, with the labour force survey being more accurate. And the reason, and obviously the old reasons that we said, the live register includes those who legally sign on and work part-time, or those who are not seeking employment. So any of those reasons. And again, when this is sent out to you guys in the email, there will be solutions as well. So you can give it to your class, and then you have the solutions that are already ready made for you. And the same when the resources for economics in our world goes live on your Edco Learning. All of the solutions to every question, and Susan has said it earlier, the higher and ordinary level questions are in each chapter, again with solutions done for all. So that's just to cut down on the prep time for class. And then again, part B of this question. So again, just that entry point that the SEC kind of like to do. So economists often regard an unemployment rate of 4.1 as full employment in the economy. So again, that's following on from above. Again, that rate could change, but again, the question would be the same. Explain the term full employment. So again, we're seeing there 3 or 4 lines replicating what has come up in the SEC papers. And then again, a follow-on question, and again, a bit more depth to this question: the possible advantages and the possible disadvantages of full employment in the economy. And again, just to go back to the exams, which would be my focus really, the first couple of years, the SEC, they weren't really putting in numbers in the spacing, so students were they were unsure in terms of how many points they needed. In fairness, the SEC, I'm not too sure if they've taken feedback from teachers or the BSCI, etc., into play, but they have generally numbered them now: 1, 2, 3, 4, advantage 1 or advantage 2. On a rare occasion, then they do leave a blank. So we go through one of those questions in a second. But my general guide to students would be 3 or 4 lines for your answer there. So if there's 12 lines there, well, like, you're giving 3 or 4 points. In fairness, I don't think there's any exam since 2021, since the new spec has come in, where you've been asked for more than 4 points. And you compare that to where we were with the old course, and you could be asked for 5 points. And that is a change. Like, 4 points generally has been the most that they've been asked for. And I think that was the assumptions for one of the market structures. 4 points was the most there. So again, I've labeled it here, so I've made it easier for the students. So they've had advantage 1, advantage 2. Again, higher tax revenue, the lower social welfare payments, the increased demand in the economy, and any of the advantages that we see. But again, another thing that the SEC are going is looking at 2 sides of the coin. So traditionally, they might have just looked at the advantages. Well, full employment is a good thing. But now to see the other side of the coin is important, that students are able to identify that. Well, there are also disadvantages, and we're seeing them at the moment in the economy in terms of labour shortages and pressure on infrastructure. So that would be a big thing. And it's something that has been very common since the new spec, looking at both sides of the coin there. So students are able to argue both sides. So again, that question kind of replicates that in B2. And then the final one, discuss possible ways the Irish government could increase the level of employment. But that's what I was talking to a while ago. I've left this free. So again, you see the lines there. And again, students have to navigate through, well, is it 1 point? Is it 2 points? Well, you're definitely looking for 2 points here, giving the spacing, definitely giving. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there's 8 lines here, definitely looking for 2 points. And it's something that should be getting across to students if there's nothing in the box. But as I said, the SEC, in fairness, the last couple of years, they have tidied that up. But there are still some questions. So that's the guide I normally give to students. If there's 4 lines, if there's 4 lines, you'll be given 1 point. If there's 8 lines, you'll be giving 2 points. And that it would be important for them in terms of the exam. So they're not losing marks there. They might know something, but they don't fill the space. But again, you're trying to get them to write as much as possible in the exam. If it's not down on paper, well, then they can't get any marks for it. And so fill the boxes as much as possible. And again, just the final part, and I'll hand back to Susan. And after this, I'm at part C. Now, again, I just brought this in. Again, it's something that we're seeing. Obviously, in the old course, just to go back to that, like, if there was a national income question, well, you'd be ensured that it was A, B, and C was national income. That has changed with the new spec, and parts of, or the different strands are brought into all questions. So that's something that I brought in here. So what could be linked with employment and unemployment? Well, labour is very easily linked, and the questions generally kind of follow on to each other, and labour is a natural one here. So I've put that in here. So again, I mentioned it a while ago about the infographics. We get different information in different labour force surveys. So in one that they use, is the supply of labour, so the total number of hours worked in the economy. So that's a natural follow on there for the employment. And again, that's what we're looking for there in terms of the definition there, outline your understanding. And again, it's not define, it's outline your understanding. So students are getting some marks there for getting across the supply of labour, what they mean by that. And again, there's 3 parts to this question. So part 2, one possible reason then for the increase in the supply of labour in the Irish economy has been the increase in the minimum wage, and then explain the term minimum wage. So obviously that's an incentive to work. So minimum wage then, the lowest, now this came up a couple of years ago, and a lot of students were just saying minimum. And obviously if it's in the question, then they should be using a different word. So the lowest amount of money that an employee can be paid for work per hour. And again, by law, it's passed in legislation by the government. Again, it's topical. It could also be linked this year in the exam. The minimum wage has gone up since January. So again, it's a topical question. Knowing the effects of this would be a big thing, positive and negative. Again, looking at the SEC side of things, they want students to be able to identify both sides. So again, that's a topical question that could have come on. Now, I could have went there with the part 3. I went back to the supply of labour. So I said, outline the factors other than the wage rate that affect the supply of labour in an economy. Again, I've given the lines there with no numbers just to get across to students how many points. And again, it's good training for them in class if you're giving class tests, just to train them up in terms of the lines, the spacing, how much points they should be giving. But I also put in this question in that part 3. Again, it's something that has come up in the last couple of years where the SEC will give you 1 and then it's other than. So again, it's here, it's outline the factors other than the wage rate. You'd be surprised the amount of times in the summer that you actually get the wage rate now in this answer, for example. Like, students really do need to read the question. And again, training them to do that in your class tests, I think, is important. So I put it in here, other than the wage rate. So again, they're looking at the other factors there in terms of level of taxation, in terms of the size of the population, the length of the working week. And again, making sure that, and again, economics hasn't changed. Again, it's important that they state and they explain all of their answers. Like, that is key. We've tried to lay out the book in that way throughout all of the chapters. We've stated, we've explained, and again, making sure that students are developing their answers. And again, if you look at the marking scheme that the SEC publish, that descriptive marking that they talk about in terms of how well developed the answer is, that's important. So that's why getting students to fill those answer boxes with the 3 or 4 lines is very important. So that's something that we've tried to get across in the book, state and explain and develop the points as much as possible. But as I said, all these will be sent out in the email. Rochelle will probably send it out. But again, there's a solution there with the answers, the advantages, disadvantages. Again, most of them there are stated and explained. You see it there. And again, it's coming from the textbook. So you will have all that covered in economics in our world. But again, all I was trying to do tonight, guys, is just to get across, look, a sample question on a topic that we go through in the new textbook. And as I said at the start, myself and Susan, I think together we've kind of tried to cover all angles and trying in terms of making it relevant for students. And then my side, trying to make students prepared for the exam. And that's why I deal with a lot of that and a lot of the questions in the chapters. I really hope that you enjoy the textbook and that your students enjoy it. But that was that exam question. So I'm delighted to hand back there now to Susan, and you can take it from there.